Let me have a look what we're going to do today. So we're going to continue talking about self-compassion and how to become friends with yourself. So far, we have discussed what self-compassion is and what it is not. And we spoke about the potential of the mind. And yesterday, we started talking about where does our lack of self-compassion come from? And I say we made a start because on day 4 or 5, we will continue talking about that. Where does it come from? But we discussed yesterday one particular level of our lack of self-compassion. And so in order to see that, we looked into how we find happiness and how we find freedom from suffering. And we saw that by following our pleasant feelings that arise in the mind, that is what we feel is our happiness. And we find freedom from suffering by avoiding unpleasant feelings that arise in the mind. And so we looked into what we call the 8 worldly dharmas. There are 4 worldly dharmas that we crave for, that are conditions for pleasant feelings to arise. And then, so we try to follow that. We crave for that. And then there are 4 worldly dharmas that cause unpleasant feelings to arise in the mind, and we try to avoid that. We believe that the unpleasant feelings is the problem. If they are gone, we are free of problems. And then what is left is only the happy feelings, the pleasant feelings, right? This is how we split our world into 2. Part of the world is good. We want to experience that. Part of the world is suffering. We do not want to have that. True? You remember? So what Buddhism says, actually both are part of the same problem. Both are just the different side of the same coin. So if we really want to be free from suffering, and then I'm talking about free from suffering in the sense that the mind becomes really peaceful and calm, we have to look at both of them. Because if we have strong craving for the good things in life, then when the opposite happens, strong suffering will arise. And also we can say if we have strong aversion for one aspect of life, that means that there is a strong craving for the opposite of that. And so strong craving for one, strong aversion for the other, that is what creates the problem. Both the craving for having it and the craving for not having it causes the problem. So we say that both experiences, pleasant and unpleasant feelings, are in the nature of suffering. And the way that we react to them means that the mind becomes disturbed. The mind is not peaceful. So today we're going to talk about how we can find freedom from suffering. And that is the meaning of self-compassion, right? Self-compassion is the wish for oneself to be free from suffering. How are we going to do that? So before we start, we'll do a little meditation to collect all the energy to the present moment so that the mind is clear and focused and can absorb as much as possible. So we just take a few moments to sit comfortable. And if you want, you can sit in a formal meditation posture, or you can just sit comfortably on your chair or on a cushion. The main thing is that you bring your awareness to the present moment. And we do that by bringing our mind to the body or to the breath. You can bring the mind to the body in a very general way. You are aware of the different aspects of your body that present themselves. You can be aware of feelings that arise in the body. And you observe without judgment, without expectation. It is what it is. And maybe you can observe, maybe you can feel that your mind starts calming down. The delusions subside. And then you can think that you're going to keep your mind in the present moment during this session. Only after the session, you start thinking about what's next. By being with your mind in the present moment, the mind is most focused, most clear, most sharp, so you can easier understand the real meaning of what we are talking about. And then we set a motivation for doing this session by thinking that just as I want to be free of suffering, all sentient beings want to be free of suffering. So by me learning about suffering, about how to become free from suffering, I will somehow maybe be able to benefit others with that as well. If you find freedom of suffering, it is anyway easier to benefit others. Because you're not so occupied with yourself anymore. but also in you discovering what it means to be free from suffering and how to do that. You learn to understand how the mind works. And the mind for each and every sentient being works exactly the same. So by learning about yourself, you learn to understand others better. And that will help you to get more skillful means in order to help them. So before we go into the new material, our director of Tushita, Pema, has asked, she would like to say a few things to you. So she's going to talk to you for a couple of minutes and then you come back and we start the teaching.
Thank you, Venerable. Hi, everyone. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zones. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'm Pema Wangmo. I'm the director here at Tushita Meditation Center. So I just want to thank you all, first of all, for your presence. And so we started running these online courses towards the end of March, and we are still continuing. And the main reason that we are continuing, one of the main reasons that we are continuing is that that when we started this course, these courses were being received so well, and we received also requests from our students and friends of Tushita asking us to continue. So thank you all for your interest and enthusiasm. And then second reason for running these online courses is that usually we have residential courses, but because of the global pandemic, so we can't do the residential courses. So since we can't do the residential courses, so residential courses are actually the main source of income. So since no residential courses, it means that we don't have any sources of income. So in order to keep Tushita alive and floating in the context of pandemic, so we are doing online courses to raise funds. So we are now in the 4th month of the lockdown, and it seems that it will take a couple of months, or I think it seems that we might not be able to open this year. So if you find these courses beneficial, then I would like to request you all to support us by making donations. So actually the link and the account details for making the donation is given there in the email when you register for this course in the beginning. So please refer back to that email, or if you don't have that email, then you can contact us at register@tushita.info to ask for the payment details. And those of you who are watching from YouTube, if you don't have any details, then you can also contact us at the same email address to get the payment details. And then also, if any of you would like to make offerings for Venerable Jamyang, and we have Felipe, though he's not leading meditation here, but he's there all the time, every session, making sure that the session goes smoothly. He's there supporting us, giving the technical support. And also he led many courses for past 4 months. So explanations are most welcome for them. So for them also you can use the same link or same account details. But when you make the offerings, in the comment there is a, in the link when you open the page, there is a comment section. So in the comment, please mention clearly whether it's for Venerable Jamyang or for Felipe or Tushita, so that we can differentiate. And then what else? Yeah, I think that's kind of it. And after this, we have another course. I think you all know well. How to meditate is coming up. So all of you are most welcome to join for that. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So then we can start with the topic today. So we're going to talk about how can we stop creating the causes for suffering, right? We still want to be free of suffering. How do we do that? So Buddha said when he taught the Four Noble Truths that the cause for suffering is karma and delusions. So today we're going to look into how can we stop creating karma and what can we do with the delusions that arise. So how do we normally stop creating the, how do we normally find happiness is by following attachment. And how do we normally try to be free of suffering? By following our aversion. So both reactions, they arise in dependence upon the self. And the self has needs and has wants, right? And so attachment helps us to come closer to the objects and persons, in dependence on which we experience pleasant feelings. And aversion helps us to be separated from the things or the people, in dependence on which unpleasant feelings arise in the mind. That is the way that we normally survive. That is the way that we normally get what we need. That is the way that we get what we want. It is the way that we protect ourselves. And it is the way that we sustain our life. And for many nowadays, it is also the way that we give meaning to our life. I find it a little bit sad to say, but that is how we live, right? We set a goal. I want to have a big family house. And so what do I need to do in order to get a big family house? I need to make money. I need to have a good job. For that, I need to have good education. And so we set out in order to achieve that goal. And that is what gives meaning to our life. But it is totally based on attachment. Attachment to this life. Craving for material things, craving for the pleasures of the six senses, craving for hearing sweet and ego-pleasing sounds, craving for reputation. That is what determines for many meaning in life. And so in order to do that, we have to be free of these four that give us the displeasure, right? So that we do on the side as well. We make sure we do not like it to be poor. So we're willing to work really hard not to be poor. We make sure that we go to the restaurant that has the really good food. We make sure that we wear the clothes that feels nice. We make sure that, you know, whatever we're doing, that we avoid the displeasure of the six senses. And if there are people who are not speaking nicely to us, who are using harsh words, we just avoid them. No problem. We are very good in that. We know how to do that. Avoiding personal slander, blame, criticism is maybe not so, maybe we don't have so much control, but we are quite willing to compromise if that would save our reputation. So whatever we do, following attachment and aversion in order to get pleasure and be free from displeasure, that disturbs the mind, both of them. Because attachment and aversion, we call them disturbing emotions. We call them delusions. And so that means that delusions do not necessarily feel bad. Right? Sometimes we think, oh, that person is delusional because they say things that we can't understand. Or we say somebody is really going out of their mind because they're so angry. We say, oh, he's very delusional. But Buddha says, actually, we are all very delusional. Even when we feel good, you know, if that feeling good comes from attachment and from pride, for instance, both feel good when they arise in the mind. But they're both disturbing the mind. They're both disturbing emotions. They're both delusions. Some delusions feel bad, like anger, jealousy. And they're the things that feel bad, they're more related to the aversion. They arise in dependence on the diversion, on aversion. So striving to be free from disturbing emotions means letting go of the disturbing emotions that feel bad, but also of the disturbing emotions that feel good. And this is very tricky for the mind, because the mind thinks, what? Do I have to give up my happiness? Right? But that is not what we're talking about. You can keep your happiness, but what we try to let go is the craving for more. That is what is disturbing, not the happy feelings itself, not the pleasure itself. There is no problem in experiencing that. Before you can say, okay, I'm going to work on lessening my disturbing emotions, you first need to be very sure that they are, although they appear to be helpful, although they appear to help you, you have to see that in actuality they are not. And in order to see that they are not, we have to have a little bit longer vision than we have at the moment. Our mind works, I want to be happy now. Right? If you want to be happy now, then attachment is the best thing that you can do, that you can follow. If you want to have freedom from suffering, you want it now. You do not want to have it in 10 years. You want it now, you know? So the way we react with attachment and aversion, we react very emotionally. Sometimes I think we are a little bit like little toddlers who say, I want to be happy now. I want that biscuit now. I want that toy now. Right? And if we don't get it, we throw a tantrum. You recognize that we do that? So if we could see a little bit further into the future, if we could wait for that feeling of happiness, if we would not demand it right now, we have many more options to create a more stable way of being happy. So to be able to do that, you have to see that these disturbing emotions that arise in the mind are attachment and aversion, that in actuality, they do not have the capacity to give you what you want. You know, they appear like that, but they can't. Why? Because both exaggerate the qualities of the object that you crave for. So attachment exaggerates the good qualities of the object, and aversion and anger, they exaggerate the negative qualities of an object. And we can see that really well when you fall in love, you know. When we fall in love, the person that we fall in love with is fantastic. Each and every part of that person is wonderful. Even things that normally would agitate you in a person, this time you think, so cute. He's so cute. Right? And then you engage in a relationship. And then after 6 months, after 8 months, when the hormones start to change, it's like you're waking up and you think, huh? What is he doing? Oh, can't stand it. And then the agitation that you normally would feel with that behavior starts coming up. But under the influence of attachment, we get this idea that that person is totally wonderful. Right? If that person would be really wonderful, then each and every person would have to see the person that you are in love with as a very wonderful person. And we know that when we totally fall in love, you know, even our good friends, they might say, why did she fall in love with him? What? Our friends don't see all these wonderful qualities that we see. Our friends know that we are in a different world. Right? That is what attachment does. It exaggerates the good qualities. So these good qualities are not really living in that object or in that person, which means that what you crave for, because that craving arises upon your idea about the object or about the person, when then you have contact with that object or the person, that can never give you what you crave for. Because what you crave for is independence upon an idea, which is exaggerated, which has qualities that the object doesn't have. Which you crave for qualities that the person doesn't have. So you have expectations which are not realistic. That is what attachment does. Anger exaggerates the negative qualities of an object or a person. So when somebody really harms us, what happens is that we think that's a bad person. And every aspect of that person becomes bad. There is nothing pleasant about that person. Right? Have you ever seen that? Even when these people that have hurt us are engaging in positive actions with other people, we see something negative. Oh yeah, he's pretending to be good, but we know what kind of person he really is. Right? That's the mind of anger. Not being able to see that anger arose in dependence upon an unpleasant experience. An unpleasant experience, meeting with someone and experiencing something very painful, doesn't make the whole person to be bad. True? But that's what anger perceives. And so then we think about the person, just negative, 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 negative. Once the anger subsides, you can see, oh, maybe that was not completely true. So anger exaggerates, attachment exaggerates. Because of that, they do not have the capacity to give you what you want. They exaggerate the qualities of the object because they both arise in dependence on the self-grasping mind. And we talked about that yesterday, and maybe at the end of the teaching, if I still have some time, I will repeat a little bit about that. We have that self-grasping mind, the mind that holds the self to exist in a more permanent, unitary, independent manner than it exists in actuality. The self appears more substantial, more solid than it exists in actuality. So the way we perceive the self is, in a way, already exaggerated. So then whatever arises in dependence on the self, in order to help us to get what we need and to be separated from what we don't like, that also exaggerates qualities. They're not in touch with reality, I sometimes say. So if we would say, okay, I can see that my disturbing emotions, they exaggerate, and in a way they promise me things that they cannot really deliver. In a way they are deceitful. I'm gonna turn away from that. But then, how do I get what I need? And how do I gonna protect myself from things that are not pleasant? If I don't have attachment and aversion, how do I gonna do it? So we're gonna think about that. Then we're gonna think about, where does protection come from? And where does fulfillment of needs come from? How do we do that? So there's a question that says, what about people that hurt everyone they come in contact with? What about that? These people have a lot of malice, right? And I actually would say these people have a lot of suffering. And they cannot deal with the suffering, and they pass the suffering on. We'll talk about that more. So we have been under the influence of the disturbing emotions, according to Buddhism, since beginningless time. We have never experienced what it is to be totally free of these delusions. And our parents are under the influence of the delusions, our grandparents, all our ancestors. You know, this is how human beings, this is how sentient beings live their lives, under the influence of the delusions. No matter where you are in samsara, whether that is here on this planet as a human being, as an animal, or whether you are in an other form, you know, we all have delusions arising in our mind. And these delusions cause us a lot of suffering. And due to the craving for pleasure and the aversion for the displeasure, we keep engaging in actions. And if we really analyze the actions, we can see that these actions are actually causes for more suffering, That's how we have been doing that. And then at this time in society, if we see how we are encouraged to follow our attachment, I don't know if it comes from the Industrial Revolution. I don't know if it comes from, but there is a huge amount of money that can be made if we follow our attachment. Right? Everything that we believe I need in order to be happy is coming from following my attachment. And so if you see how big companies sell their products, they tell you that you're going to be more happy when you buy their products. You're going to be more comfortable. You're going to be more successful. You're going to be more healthy. You're going to be more, all these things that you want, you know, just buy their products and you're going to get it. And so you think, I'll give it a try. I'll do it. And you try and you try and you try and you try. But always something is missing, no? Still not completely right. I still need something else. Why? Because attachment cannot give you that peaceful, calm mind that you actually would like to have. The happiness that comes from a peaceful mind cannot be brought to you by following your attachment. Impossible. So later we'll talk about more about the qualities of attachment, what it is, how it feels like, and how we can counteract that. But I first want to go somewhere else. So we are encouraged to follow our attachment in our society, in our way of life. And also, I think, I don't know, I see that maybe it's my mistake, but we are not really taught how to be with unpleasant feelings. Are we? Nobody tells us. I don't know, I was never told how to do that. Right? If you know how to be with unpleasant feelings, then it is much more difficult to trigger your attachment. Because you can deal with the discomfort. The discomfort is not a problem for you. So when somebody says, oh, this is so much more comfortable, you say, for me, it's not a problem. I'm quite happy with what I have, right? So by not, I don't know if that is a conscious thing, you know, but not talking about how to be with unpleasant emotions makes you much more vulnerable for being hooked with in your attachment. Right. So I think we need to learn that, how to be with unpleasant emotions. And we're gonna talk about that, and I will give you techniques that are very easy actually, and very helpful and effective. But before we go there, I want us to first look at other things. You know, first I think we look a little bit on the broader level of how we can stop creating the causes for suffering. So we believe that the pleasant feelings come from following our attachment. The pleasant feelings come from indulging in an object, from having contact with certain object or certain persons, right? We believe if we want pleasure, I think, who shall I call? You know, which friend shall I call? Or maybe I'll go out for a nice meal, or maybe because that is going to give me pleasure. So pleasure comes from following my attachment. That's what we believe. True? Buddhism says feelings are the result of actions. Buddhism says every action that we do, whether that is a verbal action, a physical action, or a mental action, leaves an imprint in our mind. And that imprint has the capacity to, at a later point in time, give you as an experience which correlates to the action that you committed. So if I engage in actions that are beneficial, that cause happiness in others, then that leaves an imprint in my mind. And at a certain point in time, that imprint will ripen under the influence of causes and conditions. It will ripen into a happy experience. Similarly, if I create negative actions, if I create harmful actions, whether that is towards others or towards myself, that leaves imprints in my mind. And then at a later point in time, when causes and conditions come together, that imprint will ripen into a suffering experience. So what Buddhism does is they're not so interested in the feelings that arise, but they are interested in what kind of actions are you engaging in. Knowing that when you engage in positive actions, positive experiences will arise naturally at a later point in time. So that is a very different mindset. Instead of looking at the feelings, you look at your actions. Okay, so we have to, that's a very important one. Maybe write that down to remember. So what kind of imprints are placed in the mind? You know, when we do an action and it leaves an imprint in the mind, that imprint can ripen in 4 different ways. And it can ripen in all these 4 different ways. So one way that it can ripen is in a type of rebirth that you take. And in a type of rebirth. Then the next way something in action or the imprint can ripen is in a result similar to the cause in terms of experience. So for instance, if I have out of anger hit someone, then at a later point in time, causes and conditions come together and another person, or maybe that same person in a different body, is angry with me and hits me. So the experience that I gave to somebody else comes back to me. That is called the result similar to the cause in experience. A third way that imprint can ripen is as the result similar to the cause in action. So when I have hit someone and that gives me a good feeling, you know, oh, such a relief, you know, that person deserves that. And then the next time when something similar happens, it's very easy to hit again, right? And then it becomes easy to cultivate a habit of every time when a similar situation occurs like that I save myself or I find relief from suffering by hitting the person. Same for killing, same for stealing, you know, same for cheating. If you do your taxes, you know, and you think, oh, I won't put that in and I pay less taxes, and you succeed, you think, oh, wow. Next time you do it again. Next time you do it again. And before you know, you are cheating all the time. And then from cheating your taxes, you go maybe to cheating your customers. And then from cheating your customers, maybe you go to cheating, I don't know, your friends. Cheating becomes your habit, right? And then because we engage in cheating again and again and again, we create causes for suffering to come to us again and again and again. So that is the third way that karma ripens. And then the fourth way is what we call the environmental result. You know, where we are born, the environment that we experience is a result of our karma. If we create positive actions, then the environmental karma will be positive. You know, it is pleasant to be in, you have good food, you have good medicine, everything is working. That's the result of good environmental, that's the good result. That is a result that comes from positive actions, an environmental result that comes from positive actions. So these are the 4 different ways that karma ripens. That karma comes from our actions. So if we want to change our karma, we have to change our actions. True? We want to be free from suffering. That is the meaning of self-compassion. So how do we stop creating the causes for unpleasant feelings to arise in the mind? That's a very important one, isn't it? Because we all the time want to run away from that. How do we stop that? So where do unpleasant feelings come from? They come from having harmed others in the past. Having caused suffering to others in the past. That is what makes us suffer. So how do we stop that? We stop by engaging what we call the 10 non-virtuous actions. So in Buddhism, we talk about 3 negative actions of the body, 4 of the speech, and 3 of the mind that we want to abstain from, that we do not want to engage in. So the 3 actions of the body are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Killing, you know, I mean, some of you for sure, they already say, I do not want to kill anymore. I do not want to do this anymore. I do not. But it is quite easy to kill in life, right? Some people have habits to kill the flies and the mosquitoes and the ants and anything that agitates them, they kill it. And then we kill the animals to eat, and then we kill, you know, the animals that are on the path, and then we kill. Quite easy to kill. So if you say, I stop killing, I'm gonna be more mindful where I walk, that I don't step on the ants, that I don't step on the snails. I'm gonna be more mindful that even if there is a mosquito in my room, that I'm not gonna kill it. You know, how can I be with a mosquito without killing it? So we try to find ways of not to engage in an action that we normally would engage in. And when we do that, that is already such a virtuous mind in order to have the thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to harm somebody else so that I'm free of suffering. Or in order for me to have something that I really want, I'm not going to cause harm anymore. That's a huge purification of the mind. So we stop engaging in killing and stealing and sexual misconduct. And then in terms of speech, the 4 actions, the negative actions of speech are lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, and gossip. And we know how easy it is to make a lie, right? And we think, oh, but I make a good lie. Or I make a lie in order to help somebody. Is that okay? You know? So there, you can talk about that a lot. Lying is still a negative action. When you do it for the good reasons, there is a positive aspect in the lie, but that doesn't mean that there is no negative effect from the lie. But if we really are willing to lie, then we're also willing to take on the consequences of that. And so there are 3 negative actions of the mind. The first is malice or ill will, the wish to harm. You know, when we are very angry with someone, we can think about all kinds of ways that we would like that person to suffer. That's malice. And then we have covetousness, and covetousness means that we are craving for something that is not ours. You know, our friend got these beautiful shoes. You know, we think, oh, I wish I had shoes like that. I wish I had these shoes from her. And then we fantasize about that, and we even think they are mine. You know, that's covetousness. And then the last one of the mind is the wrong views. When we have wrong views with respect to reality, with respect to how things work in life. Wrong views means that we are doing something that is actually opposite to how it works in actuality. So I can have the view that I need to offer certain animals in order to create good conditions to have a good harvest. You know, in Buddhism, killing animals is the wrong means. Killing animals can never give you a positive result. So they call that, if you believe that you need to kill animals in order to have a good harvest, they call that a wrong view. That's a negative mind. I'm just going to quickly look at the questions because there are many. So I talked about the exaggerating the qualities, which attachment does, which aversion does. I never said you're not supposed to do that, right? What I'm telling you is how the mind works. This is what it is doing. So we're not going to say, oh, I'm not going to exaggerate. You can't do that. When attachment arises in the mind, it is already exaggerating, right? So we're not going to stop the natural flow, even when there are delusions. But what we're going to try to do is we're going to educate ourselves, and we're going to give ourselves knowledge about how the mind works. We're going to give ourselves knowledge how reality exists, how delusions exist, what they do, and how they appear like. And the more knowledge we have, the less we will believe in them. And by not believing in them, they start to lose their power. And then they lose controlling us. They lose their control over us. So it is our wisdom mind that is going to help to counteract that. It is knowledge. You know, the Buddha, whatever he taught, how do we get out of suffering? Through knowledge. So we're not going to stop anything. We're not going to try to manipulate anything. We're not going to beat ourselves up for anything. We just keep educating, learning. And the more you learn, you know, at a certain point, you just do not go there. Or you go there, and while you go there, you know, actually, I shouldn't go there. Right? But you don't force yourself into behavior that doesn't feel natural, or that. And so isn't that so? And I'm not saying that you can't fall in love. And if you want to experience all that excitement, you can. You know, I'm not stopping anyone of experiencing whatever. What I'm saying is that the excitement that arises in the mind disturbs your mind. What I'm saying is that you will have an idea about qualities that are there in your girlfriend or in your boyfriend that are not really there, you know, but you're very welcome to discover that yourself, right? You cannot say when you fall in love, oh, I'm not going to follow that. That will be very difficult. But you keep your mind, you keep observing in your mind what is really going on. So we do try to look at these emotional reactions that we have of attachment and aversion. We look with a rational mind at these reactions, and we try to see their nature, and we try to see where they are taking us, and we try to see that they are not bringing us where we want to go. And the better we see that, the less need there is to follow them, right? It doesn't mean that we become totally irrational. It is more that the rational and the emotional, they communicate and they become imbalanced with each other. And then the emotional becomes supportive of the rational and the other way around. So anything that we do in order to stay alive, needing food, needing a place to live, having a physical body, that is all coming from attachment. You know, attachment is what makes us enter into this body. Due to attachment, we have this body. And then in order to sustain the body, you know, attachment is at work all the time. I think I mentioned that yesterday. That is cyclic existence, that is samsara. Because we have a body that is made by karma and delusions, that is coming from desire. That body is working in dependence on desire. And in order to sustain it, we need that desire. And so by following the desire, we actually create causes for suffering in the future. But because we have that body, it's very difficult not to do that. That's a little bit the problem that we are in. So there is one question that says, how do we define an action as positive or negative? Positive actions are those actions that have a positive result. Positive actions are the actions that have the result of a pleasant experience in the future. And negative actions are the actions that lead to suffering. So we're not really looking into, we are looking into the actions that you're doing, but it is defined on the basis of the result that the action is bringing. All right. I want to go a little bit further with how we can stop creating suffering for ourselves. So abandoning the 10 non-virtuous actions, that is a very powerful one. Then if you want to create more pleasant feelings, you engage in the 10 virtuous actions, such as saving lives, engaging in actions of giving, respecting other people's property, respecting relationships, speaking truthfully. So the opposite of the negative actions. Using pleasant words when you speak, bringing people together, talking meaningful, about meaningful objects, subjects. And by directing your mind to the happiness and the welfare of sentient beings instead of wanting to have what they have or instead of wanting to harm them. And then by studying about how things work in life, about the nature of reality, both conventional and ultimate. When you do that, then many of these actions, and maybe all of these actions, when we do these actions, already pleasant feelings arise in the mind. But also at the same time, every time we do a positive action that leaves an imprint in the mind, that somewhere in the future, when causes and conditions arise, when they come together, that imprint will ripen into a pleasant experience. So engaging in positive actions, that creates causes for pleasant feelings. And then what also helps to create pleasant feelings, but that is a little bit on a different level, is when we practice concentration. When we meditate, and especially when we do practices in order to achieve single-pointed concentration. When we achieve single-pointed concentration, we're going to experience a lot of bliss arising in the body and in the mind. But that is a very different field, maybe. Let's talk. So I'm going to stay a little bit into just this life, what we can do in this life. So this is what we can do in terms of actions. And then we can look into what if the delusions arise? What can we do with the delusions? Because when delusions arise, we can do things that will help to lessen the delusions. In order to lessen the delusions, you reflect on the delusions and on the disadvantages from following them. So, and we already said a little bit about that. Delusions are out of touch with reality. They exaggerate the qualities of the objects. And so knowing that, I think the next days or weeks or however long, you're going to observe that in your mind. Oh, I have this strong need to eat this and this and this. What is your belief? What kind of qualities are going to come? And then you maybe eat that, and then you think, was that really what I thought it was going to be? Was it really that perfect? Was it really that beautiful? Was it really? Just observe. This is what my mind is telling me, and I'll try and see if that is really true. And then you can also observe how it disturbs the mind. Right? Both attachment and aversion, they disturb the mind. And then you can reflect on the fact that they are deceptive. So attachment appears as that what helps you to get what you need or want. But in actuality, it will never bring you fulfillment. The nature of attachment is that there is always dissatisfaction. There is always something missing. Yeah, we say it was quite good, but if we also had this, then it would be even better. Then it would have been really perfect. Right? Always something missing. And so what we then say in Buddhism is that it doesn't bring you real happiness. And we spoke about that yesterday, right? Desire is like having a skin disease, and it is itching. And so you scratch, and you think, oh, that's such a relief. But then 5 minutes later, it starts itching again. So what we say in Buddhism is better have no skin disease at all, and you don't have to scratch again and again and again. When we keep following attachment, when we live our life just on the basis of following our attachment, our life becomes very empty. It's about nothing, no meaning. No matter how big the house is that you have, how fantastic car, what a wonderful career, is that really what is bringing happiness? Is that really what is bringing fulfillment? When you do it just for the money, just for the material gain, just to have reputation, how do you feel? Empty. But due to attachment, we have this body. And so all the problems that arise from the body, they come from attachment. And so the problems, they arise, and then we try to make the body comfortable, and we do all kinds of different things to make the body comfortable. But there is no end to comfort. Every time when we think we're comfortable, somehow the discomfort comes again, and we have to find more comfort. And no matter how far you go, there is no end to that. And so when we have strong desire, then we have also strong anger. We have also strong jealousy, because they both arise in dependence upon attachment. If we have strong desire for certain things or a certain person, and we can't get that, we're going to be very unhappy. The mind is going to be very disturbed. And if we look into desire and we think about very strong desire, we can see that from desire, addiction comes. We want to do it again. We want to do it again. One more time. One more time. That's attachment. And I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, we talked about drug addiction and alcohol addiction. But I think nowadays we have so many more addictions. True? You can think about all the addictions that you know that people are suffering from. That's because we constantly trigger that attachment. And so when that attachment is triggered strongly, then also disease can easily manifest in the body, because attachment is the cause from our diseases. So thinking like that, then maybe you're going to think, maybe attachment isn't the right thing to follow, you know? Maybe I can do things in another way. What if my mind would be free of attachment? And I know there are questions, and I said, and how do we do things? But we will talk about that at a later point. Attachment is not the same, or stop following your attachment is not the same as not having anymore what you need. These are two totally different things. What you need comes about due to your karma. You already created a karma for that. You do not need your attachment to get the food. We think we need attachment for that, but you already created the karma for having food. So you can go to the shop and buy your food, but you don't need attachment for that. So if you say, okay, how can we live with less attachment? So what we do in Buddhism is we think about impermanence and death, because attachment is fully focused on this life, sustaining this life, sustaining the here and now. I want this now, I need this now for my life. So what we do is we meditate on, well, this life is not going to be here forever. I'm not going to live forever. One day I will leave this body. And in Buddhism, then we believe in past and future lives. So we believe that we will take another body. And then what? You know, if I'm obsessed with attachment in this life, and under the influence of attachment, I create the causes for suffering again and again and again, then what is going to happen to me in next life? So you think about death, you think about impermanence of this life, you think about the impermanence of whatever is passing through in terms of objects and in terms of persons. And by doing that, your grasping mind becomes automatically less strong, less strong, less strong. You become less obsessed with this life. You become less obsessed with having it right now. You know, everything becomes much more relative. And by being less obsessed, you already let go. Attachment is already letting go. Another way of doing is you can think about being content with what you have, being content with living comfortably but simple. If you are content with what you have right now, no attachment in the mind. So these are the two main antidotes that we use for attachment. And then in terms of aversion and especially anger, we use the antidotes of practicing patience and loving kindness. Patience is the mind that is undisturbed by harm. So even when somebody is very rude to us, even when somebody really hurts us, when we have a mind of patience, the mind does not get disturbed. When the mind is not disturbed, all these thoughts that we normally have, thinking about what happened, thinking about the person who did that to us, all these negative thoughts that upset the mind, then they don't arise. Yes, we cannot stop the action, but we can stop the mind that keeps thinking about it. So we'll talk about that in the next 3 times, how you can do that. And then we practice loving kindness. Because if somebody has hurt us, what the mind automatically wants is somehow we wish that other person to have suffering, right? Have you ever observed that in your own mind? When somebody really hurts us, we want them to suffer. Loving kindness is the mind that wishes the other person to be happy. The mind of loving kindness and the mind of anger towards one person, they cannot arise together. So when we shift the mind, instead of thinking bad, instead of thinking, wishing that person harm, we're going to wish that person really well. We're going to wish that person happiness. Then anger naturally disappears out of the mind. Sounds very simple. It's not so simple to practice, you know, but it can be done. It can be done. And I see that where the time is going so fast. I'm going to look a little bit in the questions. So in terms of this life, you know, we are living in what we call samsara. Every action that we do in samsara, there is somehow harm involved. There is somehow suffering involved. It is, no matter how hard we try, you know, but being vegetarian, being vegan, the fact that we need to eat in order to sustain the body means that we're going to harm other sentient beings. That's the nature of this life, you know, so much suffering. Sometimes in Buddhism, they talk about oceans. As the suffering is as deep as the ocean. So we cannot stop that, but we can find ways of connecting with these beings that get harm in the process of us sustaining our life. I'm not sure if we can do that in this course though, but, and I'm pretty sure that in the course from Venerable Jamyang, these things come, are discussed. Now I have a nature that wants to answer all the questions and now I have to go against that. So we're going to talk about forgiveness. Later. And I have seen your question about aversion towards unpleasant sensations, and we talk about that next time, what to do with unpleasant feelings. Okay. So I will read through all the questions and I will try to integrate it in the next one, but I cannot promise that we can do them all, you know. Because I think everything I say, 2 or 3 more questions pop up in your minds. And we just have only these 6 days to talk about a certain topic, but maybe in other courses, you know. These are all good questions. So try to read about it, try to think about it with the information that you already have. And maybe answers come, you know, because you also have an inner wisdom. It is not that I can tell you all the answers. You have to think for yourself with the information that you get and apply that and see what your wisdom comes up with. All right. So tomorrow there is no session because I need to teach for another center. But then on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we have 3 more sessions. And on Friday, we're going to talk about what we do when we experience suffering, the unpleasant feelings. Okay? And then I would like to finish today with a meditation on the nature of the mind, how we can be with our mind, how attachment appears to the mind, how aversion appears to the mind, and how we can be with that without following it. Okay? If you don't have time, that's fine too. You can always come back later to the recordings that you can find on YouTube. So for the meditation, make sure that you sit comfortably. And relax your mind. Maybe there's so much information and then so many questions. So you can promise yourself that you will come back to that at a later point. But for now, you can let it go. And then bring your mind to the present moment. By bringing your awareness to your body and to your breath. Have an open mind during the meditation. If we can accept whatever arises, there is no aversion in the mind. And if we have no expectations of what might come, there is no attachment in the mind. When we have the mind in the present moment, we can see the impermanent nature of things. We can see feelings arising in the mind and dissolving back into the mind. We can observe our mind reacting to feelings. And if we don't follow that reaction, we can see that the reaction naturally dissolves back into the mind. Being mindful gives us the opportunity to see the transit nature of everything. Everything that arises naturally dissolves again. Knowing the impermanent nature through experience affects the mind in a deep way. It affects how we perceive and engage with ourselves and with the world. When we see the impermanent nature of things, naturally there is no clinging to pleasant experiences and no aversion to unpleasant experiences. We realize there is nothing to hold on to. Everything passes away by itself. Think about that. Feeling arises in every moment of mind. When pleasurable feelings arise in the mind, we react with attachment. That is our attempt to re-experience the pleasant feelings. The way we perceive it is that we first need to have attachment in order to experience pleasure. So we think if I have to give up desire or attachment, I have to give up pleasure. But that's not true. When we give up desire, we experience even more or more full the pleasure. The experience of pleasure that you have today has nothing to do with your attachment to it today. The nature of attachment is that it cannot give you satisfaction. So when we follow attachment, there is always something missing. Or we want more, or something slightly different. For instance, when we sit, we want to stand up. And when we stand up, we want to walk. There is never contentment. This is suffering. When we practice contentment, we accept what is or what we have. Without desire, without attachment, there is no dissatisfaction. And so this is where peace starts. When unpleasant feelings arise, we react with aversion. This is our attempt not to experience the unpleasant feeling. We deny or ignore or suppress unpleasant feelings. We distract ourselves, indulge in pleasant activities, and think that we are trying to relax. By rejecting the unpleasant feelings, they actually become stronger. Instead of trying to escape the unpleasant feelings, we're going to try to look. We try to become mindful of them. When we become mindful of unpleasant feelings, we relax. Because mindfulness helps us to understand the nature of things. It helps us to see the impermanence of things. Then, when things happen, we know to let go. We don't get disturbed when we lose something or when things change. And the mind that is undisturbed by loss or harm is the mind of patience. When pain or suffering occurs, it becomes quite quickly huge because we are so focused on ourselves. To counteract that, we can think, my suffering is nothing compared to the suffering of others. And then you can call people to mind who suffer so much more than you do. That will help to lessen the suffering that you experience. And the moment we realize what suffering is, peace begins. Peace lays within knowledge. As soon as we understand, peace comes. As soon as we understand that we are afraid or worried, and we accept it, the moment we accept it, it cannot become bigger. And then focus on the peaceful feeling that is in your mind. The peace of accepting whatever is. And then we can dedicate all the merits that we have created by listening and reflecting, meditating, all that positive energy. We dedicate it to the happiness and the welfare of all sentient beings, including ourselves. And then I want to thank you all for being here today. And I hope to see you on Friday, same time. Thank you.